You're listening to Filling the Storehouse podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Stuart, and we want to walk with you on the journey to living the abundant life through faith, family, and freedom. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours. Together, achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to intentionally fill our storehouse.
What's up, Storehouse Tribe? Hey, this is Stu, and hey, I just wanted to hit on one of the tenets of this podcast, financial freedom. David and I honestly think that the best way to get to financial freedom is through real estate investing. We've been investing in real estate for quite some time, and one of the coolest things about real estate is the relationships that we are able to create. We basically use partners on every single deal that we do. Both in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for our turnkey rental company and through some of our bigger deals. You know, we've done some stuff, some commercial properties here in Colorado where we live, and we're looking to do more. So if that's something that sounds of interest to you, we'd love to kind of tell you what we got going on, what we're doing. We're looking for more partners. We love building relationships and having, that trust with our partners. And the ability to offer opportunities to invest alongside with us. If that's something of interest, hey, reach out to us. We'd love to jump on the phone. We'd love to jump on a Zoom call, tell you what we're up to. You can reach out to us through social media channels. You can hit us up on LinkedIn. You can hit us up on Facebook. Well, hit up me on Facebook. Don't hit up David. You can send us an email. You can go to our website, Storehouse 310 Turnkey, and go to the contact us page. Send us an email at podcast@Storehouse 310 Turnkey. Any of those options, reach out. Let's talk real estate, and we'd love to tell you what we're up to. Enjoy this episode. Most importantly, go fill your storehouse. See you.
What up, Stewie? What up, Pat? How you boys doing today?
What up?
Doing awesome. Good to be here.
Awesome. Hey, man, we're super excited today to have Pat on the show. We got a few 2002 Naval Academy grads, so I have no doubt that this is going to be an exceptional show because the two of the three of us, Pat, I'm talking to you, are I'd like to consider us somewhat capable individuals. We're able to have intelligent, coherent conversation. Then we throw Stu in there and we'll just see what happens. He's always a wild card, dude. So just giving you a heads up on that one.
Oh man, Dave, I need a lower bar set for me.
Yeah,
lower expectations.
I was hearing some of the stories that you guys were talking about when you were hanging out at the academy that made it sound like I don't know. I might be the higher quality of individual than the two of you.
Well, because as per normal, you miss out on the details and the finer points, right? So as Pat and I were hanging out, we were telling stories about the last time we were together, which was 20 some odd years ago at the Naval Academy. Had a fun night together. But Stu, you weren't invited.
Oh, I had better places to be.
Yeah, right. You're in your room doing Casey's homework or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what you were doing.
I was having.
Well, hey,
else
we're
do my
super
homework.
excited. Oh yeah, it's probably true. We're excited to have Pat on today. He's, Navy SEAL and 2002 Naval Academy grad, CEO, entrepreneur, and just super excited to get into this conversation, bud. Talk about Madefor and some of the things you're highlighting. We're on a pretty tight timeline because I think, and forgive me, I don't know if you call them principles, but your number one focus is on the journey is hydration. And Stu and I have been taking that to heart because we're dropped about 120 ounces a day. Stu, is that where we're at right now?
Oh man, the goal is 100 ounces a day, but it makes have to do a lot of potty times.
yeah, we're gonna have to start incorporating potty breaks into filling the storehouse episodes. So
yeah.
But anyways, Pat, hey, welcome. Super stoked to have you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, bud?
Yeah, great to be here, Stu and Dave. Thanks for having me. So, as you mentioned, O2 grad from the academy. I right out of the academy went off to SEAL training. Was fortunate enough to get one of those slots, and 16 of us went from the academy. 15 of us finished, and was just truly blessed to be able to spend almost 10 years in the SEAL teams, working alongside some of the finest professionals you could ever imagine at a time when I think, our community was especially busy and had a lot going on, as you all know. Yeah, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. It was just awesome. I had a chance to work in a lot of different environments and alongside a lot of great people, and then ultimately decided to leave the teams at the end of 2011. It was something for me that I loved the job and I loved the mission and the people more than anything else. But I knew at some point I wanted to have a family, I wanted to have kids, and I wanted to have the opportunity to be there with them for that experience. And so decided to transition out, went to business school for a couple of years, and then spent a few years at Google, and then ultimately left Google to work on the company that I now run, which is Madefor.
Yeah. So, what was it that made you? Was it just family that kind of made you decide to get out of the SEAL team?
Yeah, it's I'm sure, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I told you a different story, and if you'd ask me in 5 years from now, I'll tell you a different story. But I think there was just a lot of things that were coming into the analysis or into the decision. One was a family, and I was someone that the military was never the end all be all for me. I didn't come to the academy thinking, hey, I'm going to be a career military person. It was just, hey, I'm going to do this really awesome thing, and I'm going to be all in while I'm all in. And then at some point I'll transition out and do something else. And so there was always this pull for the family. And, there are a lot of guys in the military or, people in the military that get married, and my hat's off to them. They're an exceptional group that can make it work, especially in the special operations community, because we're just gone so much, and takes a heavy toll and takes special people to make that work. But so that was a reason. That was one of the reasons. The nature of the fight was changing as well. Things were winding down in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it felt like in some ways our biggest mission sets maybe were behind us, and obviously we know that's not the case necessarily, but just a changing fight overseas. And I think for me, I just started to want different things. I recognize that the year leading up to transitioning out, again, it was a lot of self-reflection, a lot of just thinking like, hey, am I making the right decision? And ultimately what I came back to is that I love jumping and diving and shooting and blowing things up and traveling around and all these things. But ultimately those are just that's all the window dressing of the job or the wrapping paper. But the thing that I love more than anything else was working alongside a small group of committed individuals on big mission sets that matter. And that is really what got me excited. And so when I was trying to decide whether to stay in or transition out, knowing that I could continue to work on big mission sets with small groups of people that were committed. Didn't matter if I was wearing the uniform or if I wasn't, but that could continue to be the through line, gave me the peace of mind to make the transition. And so that's ultimately what I did.
Yeah, man. So you got out, went to business school, and then you went to Google. How was that? How was that transition, one? And then how was work and life at Google?
Yeah, it was, I had an opportunity to intern at Google when I was in business school, and it was a bit surreal. I think the first day I was there, the movie The Intern came out. I think it was Will Ferrell and maybe Vince Vaughn or some, these old guys that were like at Google, and very much it hit close to home because I already felt like I was the old guy in business school. And then now I'm the old guy and watching The Intern, and I've got this little propeller hat on. I was just like, whoa, life took a turn. This is interesting. But what I found in my time there was the way that Google thinks about how they allocate their resources and time is they're not interested on something unless it's solving for 1 billion people. And so just the scale at which they think about addressing problems and solving problems, I found really interesting. And then, the individuals at that company were really just really smart, well-intentioned, and it was a nice environment to be a part of from that standpoint. It's funny, when at the end of that internship, I got an offer to return back to Google, and I ultimately turned it down because I think, like many who transition out of the military, you put a lot of weight on that first professional step once you leave the service, and you want it to have the same level of consequence, or you want it to have that same visceral connection that you had when you were in. And for me, I didn't find that with the job that I had at Google during that internship. It was on a customer service support side of things. And I was just like, I can't wrap my head around leaving the military, and then now plugging myself into this and working on this role, I just wasn't excited about it. So I turned it down really in the blind. I didn't have any other opportunities coming out of business school to take on. And I ultimately, I was born and raised in Texas. Family's all back there. So I ended up taking a job with an energy company back in Dallas, somewhat in the blind again. I had a friend that had started this company and said, "Hey, why don't you come check it out? I think it'll be really interesting." And I did that. And what I found is that, great opportunities, just because something is a great opportunity doesn't mean it's necessarily a great opportunity for you. And I was very much in this mindset of, well, anyone else at school or, maybe transitioning would love this. It's like, you get access at a real high level, you're going to get to see a lot of interesting things. And I found that wasn't it was not the right opportunity for me. And I actually tried to quit on the second day. First day in, I was like, I got parked downstairs with an Excel model of like, had 25 sheets on it around this like LNG export terminal, and 5,000 pages of project finance contracts. And I just started like breaking out in hives. I'm like, this nothing about this feels right.
Yeah,
that sounds horrible, dude.
Nothing about this feels right or what I want to do. And so I try to tell them, I try to bow up gracefully and say, thank you so much for this job, but I feel like I've set you all up for disappointment and myself up as well. But I ended up staying in that position for about a year before leaving, and ultimately Google had reached back out and they were putting together a new team that sounded a little bit more interesting. And so I took them up on it and went back there. So.
Yeah, I'm curious. Well, I guess a couple things there. I really appreciate the fact that I think a lot of people struggle, especially coming out and having this high tempo mission and the camaraderie and all the things that the military brings. The transition could be somewhat challenging because replicating all of that stuff and to include the relationships and the leadership opportunities is so difficult. And I appreciate your transparency and highlighting that, hey, chances are the first thing you take probably not going to be, it's probably not going to be that home run, probably not going to give you the same level of fulfillment, but there's also a transition period mentally and physically and, relationally that you have to go through. And if you don't mind touching on some of those challenges as well, I was going to ask you a totally separate question, but as we're talking through this, I'm curious how someone, especially from a SEAL background, makes that transition and is able to rectify all those differences in their mind.
Yeah. It's such an important topic. And I wouldn't say that I don't know that I certainly don't have all the answers, and I don't even know that I did a good job of this, but some of the stuff that I've learned, and even just to set a little bit of context, a month after I left the teams, my best friend and a number of former teammates were all killed, and their helicopter was shot down in Afghanistan. And when I left the military, the last thing I wanted to be around was the military. I was just like, hey, I want to close that chapter. I want to open up a new chapter. I want to get exposed to new things. I don't want to be around the military at all. But I got that, I got word of those guys going down, and immediately went back to Virginia Beach and was helping families of the fallen and just trying to support the community the best way that I could. And so I got pulled back in when I wanted nothing more than to be away from the military. That in some ways made the transition, I would say, just a little bit more challenging, because you start to run the traps on, did I leave for the right reasons? Am I being selfish? Like, all these people are staying in, are still pressing the fight. Do I need to get my head back under the boat? Do I need to go avenge my friend's death? Like, what are, you get into this weird headspace. And I would say that more than anything put me in a place where I wanted to be, I just kept applying more and more pressure on myself to make sure that I made the most of the opportunities that were given to me. And so, whether it was from a business school standpoint or if it was from, a work standpoint, like that, I was always maximizing and never taking steps back. And I think that is, it sounds great in theory. I think the practical application of it is that it's an unfair burden to place on someone, especially when you're making that transition and you don't have all the answers and you need some time to explore and figure out, what the next thing is. And so, I would say at the peak of that, of that time before starting business school and still navigating the transition, I ended up going to Indonesia. Originally, it was supposed to be for 2 weeks. I went with a someone that was still in the teams, and we went on this surf trip to the Madefor Islands. It's this island chain off West Sumatra, and it's hard to imagine a more remote place. It's one of those things that once you finally made it to this island, you took off your shoes and your watch and your phone, and like nothing worked, and like you didn't see him again until you left. You just like stepped off, and it was like, oh wow. And what I found in being there, it took a period of time, but at some point, I just started settling into the natural rhythms of life. I started, waking up when at the sound of the first bird. I was probably going to sleep at 8 o'clock at night. I was drinking when I was thirsty and eating when I was hungry. And the most of the day was just outside and being active. And for me, it was a very cathartic place to be, especially to be alongside a fellow teammate there. And I was fortunate enough that one of the last days I was there, a guest that was there with us, not with my friend and I, but a guest that was there, cut his foot on a reef, and I always travel with sutures and, basic med kit. And so I stitched this guy's foot up, and the people that were running the camp said, hey, we'd love, if you want to hang around till the end of the season, like we could use your help, and you can help guide surfers and, stitch people up if they get wounded. And I was like, all right, yeah, sure. That sounds great. So I ended up staying for like almost 2.5 months, and then went back out when the season opened up. But it's funny.
That sounds awesome.
That's
way better than the other. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And Tawi Islands, dude, like that's like a dream of mine.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And again, this is, just because something's an amazing opportunity doesn't necessarily mean it's the right opportunity. I'd been picked up for this Goldman Sachs pre-MBA program. I think they had just launched this program, and I'd gone to New York and interviewed for it before going to Indonesia. And they called me while I was in Indo and said, hey, you got picked up and we need you to start in 2 weeks. And I was looking at, hey, I could stay on this island for another couple months, or I could go to New York and, put on the suit and start working. And I chose the island and not the suit. And it was, I think, again, it was the right decision for me based on where I was at. So, so long-winded way of just setting some context for kind of the headspace that I was in. I think, what I found really helpful in my transition is, one, leaning back in on people that have a shared common experience. So fellow teammates and, other, former military members that have made the transition. Certainly in business school, having a strong veteran network there was incredibly helpful. And then I think, any chance you get just to take a little bit of pressure off yourself and to maybe explore with a sense of curiosity instead of performance, that served me very, very well. And it's something that I still try to, internalize, because in many ways, I think the transition lasts forever, right? Like we're so connected and we're so, in that, I mean, for us, we grew up, our entire adult lives were spent in the military or formative years. And so that never leaves you. So anyways.
Hey, before your question, Stu, I want to highlight, I think what you said is so important. I'm not been doing, surf trips, but I've been going to the mountains a lot, spending a lot of times. And last week I was driving up during the week, no traffic and any kids. I was meeting Scotty Carr, another one of our classmates, another entrepreneur. And for a moment I was like, man, I wonder if I should be working right now. I wonder if I should be doing something. And then I looked at the surroundings. It just snowed. The mountains, you go over the hill up towards Evergreen, and the Rockies just open up in front of you. And the sun was coming up and it was bouncing off the snow. And I was like, God, thank you, God, for this moment. But also thank you for this moment, this moment to be able to realize I'm doing nothing wrong. I'm going to go do this thing. And I think I haven't had an adult snowboard day since being here. So I think we got like 10 runs in a few hours. We got like 25,000 feet of, vertical up and down. And we were hitting 40, 50 mile per hour averages. And I was like, dude, there's something powerful to this, and just sitting in it and accepting it and breathing and relaxing and embracing it and recognizing, I think the way you framed it was beautiful. It's not a performance-based thing. It's just, just be connected for a moment, just embrace it. I think it's so important to give ourselves permission to do those things, especially as we transition. And if Stu would ever heal up and quit using his shoulders as an excuse, we could probably do these things a little more often.
I'm almost there. A couple weeks. Yeah, dude. That was awesome, man. And that it's also a good transition into what I feel like you're doing now. I'm interested how Madefor got started, and another transition, leaving kind of corporate world, Google, to now an entrepreneur and running your own business. Like, where did this idea of Madefor? Well, first, tell our audience what Madefor is, and then how did it start? Like, where did it come from?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with where it came from and then end with what it is, because
Yeah.
I have yet to find a pithy way to describe it. But, um, you know, one of the things that I noticed going through SEAL training is my class started with 220 people. 5 weeks in, we were down to 150. 6 weeks in, we were at 36, and then went on to graduate 17 out of the original 220. And the thing that struck me about those 17 people were they were rather unremarkable looking. You wouldn't have been able to pick them out from a lineup. And in fact, all the biggest, fastest, strongest people, those that most looked the part, were some of the first to go away. And everyone that's listening knows that, SEAL training is a volunteer program, but people work really hard to get to day one of basic underwater demolition school buds. And everyone has all the attributes they need to be successful, but why do these 17 make it and the rest of them don't? I found that just really interesting. And so, I've always been, curious about human performance and potential. I don't know, Dave, if you remember this or not, but we have all the Forrestal lectures at the Academy. You get every month, you get brought into the, get brought into the basketball arena, and they give you this big lecture for the whole class. And most of those lectures, I don't remember. I remember we had a lot of impressive people, but I don't remember much of what anyone said. But there was one gentleman who spoke, and his words, he was the first African-American astronaut to do a spacewalk, and he was a physician. And so he spoke about his background and all the stuff that he'd done. But he said something that stuck with me since hearing it for the first time is, he said, the word that I hate more than anything in the human language is when someone tells me that I have, or in the English language, is when someone tells me that I have potential. Because if someone tells me I have potential, it means that I'm not doing everything with what I've been given. And for whatever reason, that stayed with me. That the gentleman's name was Bernard Harris, Dr. Bernard Harris. And so again, I've always been interested in potential and performance, and people are able to push their bodies and minds to places maybe they didn't think were possible. So fast forward a couple of years, I left the teams and I was going through business school, and a lot of what was taught in business school was frankly over my head. But I had an opportunity to audit an undergraduate class taught by a woman named Dr. Angela Duckworth, and Angela's research is all on this area, or this field of positive psychology, and she focuses on grit, and that this idea that grit is the number one determining factor for success. Just an ability to stick to something. It far outweighs IQ or income level or parents' education level, but if you can just stick to something and be tenacious, you can be successful. And knowing that was her area of research, and grit's something that I've certainly leaned in on, because I've never been naturally gifted at anything. I love the work that she shared, but this whole field of positive psychology, which is really what the course was on, I found super interesting. It was this idea that, in any intervention, whether it's a medical intervention or a behavioral intervention or a health intervention, you can focus on two sides of the equation. One side is, how can you reduce harm? How can you avoid bad things or stop bad behaviors? But then the other side of the question, or the other side of the equation, is, what are the things that you can be in pursuit of? The things that you can do that are in line with the way that your brain and body are designed, that when you engage those either habits or cultivate those mindsets or things in the environment, it actually helps you be better and leads to a more flourishing life. And a lot of what they talked about in that class mapped very well to what I saw those 17 individuals leverage in the teams. And so again, this just piqued my curiosity, and I kept researching to a point where, I couldn't go any further without actually trying to do something in this area. And so that was the impetus for leaving Google to start working on Madefor. And we really started working on it with very little more than my partner and I aligned on a mission, which is, we want to help people show up in their lives better for themselves. And if they can do that, then they're going to lift everyone else up around them in the process. And so that was our mission. Early on, I brought in a gentleman named Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist out of Stanford and studies neuroplasticity and how we can rewire the brain over the entire course of our lives. But brought Andrew in to help me build out a team of advisors, and then also really explore if we were to create a program and say we had someone for a year and we wanted to tell that person, here's how you can direct your attention and effort in the smallest ways possible over the course of a year. But if you do this, not only are you going to build better habits and you're going to build a stronger mindset, but you're going to build a better life, because reflexively, you're going to just show up in your life different. And you're going to show up in a way that, again, lifts others up and lifts yourself up in the process. And so we spent about a year developing the program. We spent a year in beta serving around 1,000 members. And then we've been working with the general public ever since then, doing just that.
What if you don't mind, what's the time frame? Kind of when did that transition happen? When did it start?
Yeah, so started working, left Google in 2017 to start working on this, and then in 2019 we served our first group of beta members. Spent about a year serving folks, and then in March of 2020, right as the pandemic started kicking off in full bore, we started selling to the general public. Made for an interesting business launch, and then we've been doing it ever since. So, and to date, I'd say we've served around maybe just over 11,000 members. So all demographics, every state. We're starting to do some international stuff now as well, but it's been cool. Serving people from 17 to 82. We've got professional athletes. We've got state judges, we've got district attorneys, we've got former felons. It really kind of runs the gamut. Stay-at-home dads. But the cool thing about it is that everyone who's gone through this program, and by now we've got thousands of testimonials, they've all said the same thing, and that is that they didn't realize how the small ways that these small things that they could do, that in doing them would actually lead to some really profound changes in their life. So we talk about hydration. We start with water, and we focus on the science of hydration and how at a very low deficit on the order of 1% to 2%, you actually have very real physical and cognitive impairments in your performance. And that deficit, the 1% to 2%, actually precedes the triggers for thirst. So you might not even realize that you're dehydrated, but your performance is being impacted. And so we talk about that, and we end that month, or we end the hydration lesson with just affirmation that hydration, much like all of these things, there's not a one size fits all approach. So 8 cups of water or 100 ounces or whatever is the wrong way to approach it. You shouldn't try to get to a certain amount. And in fact, oftentimes when we chase external metrics of success, we lose sight of really where the power and the benefits are. And that is cultivating an awareness to what is our body telling us and how can we perform relative to what our body needs and what our body's telling us. And so we ask folks for a month, for about 21 days, to track how much water they're drinking. We give them this cool water bottle with these ranger beads on it. And we say every day for 21 days, track how much water you're drinking. So every time you finish a bottle of water, move a bead. At the end of the day, record how much you drank, and then write just a short little reflection. Can be 1 sentence, 3 sentences. Write a short little reflection about how you felt that day. And so you're starting to connect how a small action that you engage in every day is creating effects on your body and how you're showing up in your life. And so even just the awareness that you're bringing to one thing starts to compound and affect adjacent areas of life. So makes you more mindful of how you're moving your body and how you're, setting yourself up for sleep, or how you're connecting with others. And I don't know, it's been fascinating to watch the program play out for so many different people in so many different ways.
So you're saying we're doing it all wrong by trying to have a metric of drinking 100 ounces of water a day and having to go potty 20 times a day. You're saying that we're doing
100%. Yeah, that's so, it's like, it doesn't matter if we're on an island in Indonesia or we're, up in the mountains, but, I think the common denominator there is that we're starting to focus less on, again, external metrics of success or, drivers of performance, and really tuning into like, hey, what is our body telling us and how are we feeling in this moment? Like when I was out on that island, I was able to just, my shoulders kind of like relax. I was able to breathe, and I really was listening to my body and doing what my body was telling me, or doing things that like brought the best out of my body. And Dave, I got to imagine for you when you're in the mountains and, we have a whole month that focuses on nature and the scientific benefits of attentional restoration and all the things that are going on, the conversation that your body is having with your environment at all times. But this idea that, man, you just feel better, and if you feel more expansive when you can see a big horizon, or you can see mountains, like, and the cool thing is, like, all of these things, they're all within our control. We have access to them at all times. And so, but we fall, oftentimes I think we fall into this mindset where, like, I got to make it to, the next quarter where I can take a week-long break, or I got to make it to, I got to get to, I don't know, a spa, or I got to get to, like, my happiness is only in the gym, or it's this destination that if I could just get a little bit further, then I'll reach it. And I think what I found and what our members have experienced is, like, that's not a great model to live by. It's not, we miss a tremendous amount of opportunity every single day to make the journey itself the destination. And that's really what we're about, and using very small scientific interventions to do that.
Yeah, I love that, man. We'll dig into some of the specifics of the other elements of the program or the journey. But what I love about it is the fact that it's so actionable, and there's tangible steps that you're taking that oftentimes will give you maybe even things that are not necessarily tangible results, right? Like you're going off how it's just a different level of health. It's a different level of awareness as well. And it's funny because I was on my, I try to get out, three times a week on these early morning walks. And this morning I was walking, I'm like, man, you know what? I'm missing out. I'm getting my workout in, getting a little, getting some PT, some sweat with the dog. But one of the things that hit me this morning, I was like, I'm missing out on the sun illuminating everything that's around me, these views and everything, because I'm doing it in the dark, right? It's early, so the sun's not up yet. Now, at the very end of it, the sun comes up. It's beautiful. It's awesome. But it's interesting that you say, I didn't think of it until just this moment. But when I was, when I felt this morning in particular that I was just missing out on whatever the surroundings had to offer from a view and a beauty standpoint, because it feeds you so much. And it's something that I've just become more aware of. And maybe it's just being on your website has brought that, but it's not just, okay, this is really pretty, right? It's, for me in my life, in my spirituality, it also is, man, this is beautiful. Thank you, God, for this day. And then that goes into, Lord, thank you that I'm walking back to a house that has 3 beautiful children, an amazing wife. I'm going to have this incredible podcast today with a classmate that we haven't caught up with for a while. The one downside is Stu will be there, but that's fine. I mean, there's something to be grateful there too. But it built into this bigger picture of that fed into so many other areas of my life. And it was just a very interesting thing. It sounds like you guys have tied science and reason and intentionality to that, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, man, I love the way that you framed it. And it's interesting. We had this guest on a couple of months ago named Ethan Cross, and Ethan is a psychologist, and he wrote this book called Chatter, and it's all about I think we can all appreciate this kind of self-rumination, this voice that is running in the back of our head. And oftentimes it seems to go to a negative place, or it's not the best teammate that we would want cheering for us internally. And Ethan talks about that so often we find ourselves, or we hear these narratives that, we have to live in the past, or we have to live in the present, or we have to live in the future. And like that one is the ideal place to be. And he said that the truth of the matter is like, we're humans. And the most amazing thing is we can go into any one of those places. So we can go back, we can be present, we can go forward. And at different times, different moments of times, it's going to serve us better to be in one of those places. But he said, one of the most powerful ways to quote unquote like zoom out, no matter if you're in the looking backwards or present or future, is to be in expansive places, and to really zoom out and feel connected, that you're connected to something greater than yourself. And so if that's, you're seeing God in nature, or you're seeing, your family, or you're feeling connected to bigger missions, or just that ability to like zoom out and spend time feeling connected to things that, inspire you, or that feel awe-inducing, like that's amazing. Like that's a gift that we have, that if we're failing to take advantage of, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, especially because it's always available to us. So I love the way that you frame that.
Well, and you had hinted, and both of you guys have hinted, this journey that it's so you guys have created this 10-month journey with a focus on a certain item every month. Could you kind of talk through what that journey looks like, and kind of big picture, and then kind of what a monthly action steps look like on a regular
Yeah.
basis?
So we start the program really explaining the methodology behind it and the science. And so it's this combination of neuroscience and behavioral science and positive psychology and physiology. So really understanding how the brain and the body work and how they work best. And so and we underscore this point that it doesn't matter if you're 65 years of age or you're 25 years of age. Every human has the ability to create lasting shifts in their brain structure, lasting shifts in their life. And so we use the brain as a proxy for, habits or mindset or, life, if you want to think about it in those terms, but that it's change is possible. And oftentimes we find ourselves in a place where we think like, I'm never going to be successful, or I can't do that, or I've tried and I've failed in the past. But we start with this, with explaining the science of why change is possible. And then what we do is we ask people when they're starting this program to set an intention. What is the thing that you hope to achieve as a result of going through this program? So by the time you get to the end of it, if you can realize this change and how you're showing up for yourself or how you're showing up for others, that would meaningfully change your life, that would something that would inspire you to action and inspire your commitment to doing the work over the coming months. The cool thing about this intention is it almost doesn't matter what someone is working on. If they've spent time thinking through this intention, they're going to find ways to map their efforts so that it brings them closer in line with that. And it's always, I guess it's a little bit of the magic of the program, but this is a program very much grounded in science, but it's just always fun to see people move closer to an intention, doing something as simple as like drinking water, moving their body, or, getting outside in nature. So we start with an intention, and then we go every month focuses on one foundational habit. So we go from hydration to gratitude to fuel or nutrition to social connection, breath work, movement, nature, rest, clarity, vision. The idea is each month we focus on something very foundational, and we really just want your attention focused on one thing that you can do. So we deliver the science around each of these areas of focus. We pair them with a 21-day challenge and then a physical tool. And really what we're trying to do is inspire someone to get offline and into action in these small positive pursuits, so consistently over time. And what we see is that not only are members developing, again, better habits, but by the time they get to the end of the program, it's not like they have a checklist of 10 things they have to do every day to feel their best, but rather they're just reflexively moving through their day better. So they've gotten better at being their best. And it might sound a little bit, I don't know if it sounds soft or it might surprising, but the through lines of this program are almost more important than any of the foundational habits that you work on. And so what we hear from our members is they find ways to be better teammates to themselves. So they're this capacity to extend compassion and grace to oneself, to recognize that life gets a vote and things are hard, and that they need to be their own best teammate. So that's certainly been a through line. This idea of cultivating a growth mindset and this recognition that the friction or the setbacks or the challenges you experience aren't a sign of your inability to be successful or that you're not going to make it, but rather this is what progress feels like. This is what it feels like to grow stronger, to get better, to progress towards the things that you care most about. And then just this recognition of having a bias for action towards the smallest steps throughout the day, that there's a ton of value in these small, consistent steps, and they don't have to be big to make a big difference, but they can sum to great effect. So those are, elements of the program that I think our members always walk away with. But, just to put a point on it, we'll have members going through, we had a member a couple months ago go through the program, and she was in our movement month, and she was an older woman. She said, when I started the movement month, I was immediately dismissive. She said, I've had a lot of injuries and I know how I can move my body, and I have my, my Peloton routine that I do, and like, that's all I can do. And she said, but I I trusted you all and I suspended disbelief and I did the challenge as you've laid it out. And she said something really interesting happened over the course of the month. She said, in one of my nightly journaling prompts, we guide members through journaling every night. She said, I realized that at some point in my life, I'd internalized this narrative that my best days were behind me. And she said, I didn't know that I was carrying this around, but she said it was very real. And she said, coming out of this month, I've been able to set that aside. And now I recognize and realize that my best days are here and now in front of me. And she said, I'm stepping more fully into my life. I'm more excited in a way that I've never been. And it was all from engaging movement in this very simple way that you all have laid it out. So again, it's an example of, someone could be working on something like hydration and then have a connection that is much more meaningful and impactful for them. So.
Dude, that's awesome, man. I think some of the things that Stu and I talk about that we know have been significantly impactful in our lives, like mindset and the way you talk to yourself and how you capture your thoughts and what you do with them and the narrative that you're running in your head, because you're running a narrative. And if you're not intentional to listen to it, you won't understand if it's a positive or negative, if it's empowering or if it's beating you down every day, and just the mindset. But also we talk about habit stacking a lot and taking these small steps, and then the bias towards action. And dude, you guys have taken all these thoughts and these things that we've done and basically made it varsity level times 10, yeah. But also like tying science to it and making it so tangible. And then, with these bite-sized actions, I think it's beautiful, man. I can't think of any other word, but to say it's just a beautiful way to frame it. And it excites me because I know, and you guys are probably just getting a fraction of the lives you're changing. You're probably just getting a fraction of that feedback. And there are, 99% of the people are not going to, whether they're not going to have, have the security to highlight it, or maybe that's just not their personality to let you guys know, hey, this is really changing my life. But I imagine it is absolutely radically changing so many lives you don't even know about. And it's awesome. I love that approach to it, that science backed. And I mean, we could talk for hours on this, but I'm just like, I can't wrap my head around how you even started it, right? Like how you even was it? I read
like
Grit
where
It,
did the 10 things come from?
Right. Like I mean, just this. I'm just curious now. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, and I want people to join the program, but I'm just curious how you even get to this level.
Well, it's funny. I don't know that I could pin one thing down, but what I would tell you is that when I started working on this, and again, going back to the earlier points in our conversation around putting a great deal of pressure on ourselves to do something that's meaningful, that we feel connected to, that we feel right by, I think having my connection to the SEAL community and to recognize that, whatever I do, I'm always going to be in some form an ambassador of that community. And like, I wouldn't, more than anything in the world, I would never want to let down that community or my teammates. And so when we started working on Madefor, the front site post for me was that this has to be so high integrity and it's got to work, and marketing can't exceed the effects that the program creates. Right. And look, there's so many examples of people out there selling pills and powders and potions, and it would be very easy to slap a trident on something and to like create a profitable business around it. But that's not what I wanted to do. I really wanted to create something that was effective. And one of the greatest compliments I've received was there's actually two. One from a former member who described the program as offensively simple, highly effective. He said, the things that you focus our attention on are like things that I knew from my grandparents or whatever, that we kind of age-old wisdom, but for whatever reason, I've just gotten disconnected from them. And the way that you deliver the program, it actually got me to do these things, and the effects have been monumental. So I found that was really cool. The second one was with one of our beta members, someone that we weren't really connected to. It was a woman in North Carolina, and we did this feedback call with her about halfway through the program, and she shared some things on the packaging and some things on this and that and all standard stuff. And so got to the end of the call, and I was like, all right, well, that wasn't so bad. And she said, oh, I've got one more thing for you. And I was like, oh man, here it goes. She said, I gotta hand it to you guys. She said, it takes a it takes a lot of guts to charge somebody money and then tell them to start the program by drinking water. But she said, I got to hand it to you because it works. And the fact that you all did that, you know, I think says a lot. And so that to me was, one of the first signs that we got, like, all right, you can have all the best of intentions and the best science and design a great program, but if people don't respond well to it, it's not going to amount to much. And so it's been nice to hear that reflected back from people. And again, I think if you lead with integrity and people understand, like, that whole adage, like, people won't care what you know about until they know that you care. I think once someone gets into our program and they realize, like, oh wow, there's a lot of care and consideration that went into the designing of this, and people respond well to it. So
yeah, dude, there's this recently in one of our circles that we're hanging out with some guys. There's this phrase that has come up called self-mastery. And it's a phrase that I haven't heard for a while. And it kind of came back into our circle. And then we're also reading this book that we're going to have a podcast guest come on, and it's about marriage. It's about, having a good marriage. And, there's a lot of focus on doing things for your spouse. But one of the things that it recommends is working on yourself. And again, self-mastery. And man, it's kind of like a catch-22 where this idea and thought of working on yourself first and becoming your highest and best self first will then transform you to be then the best teammate, the best business partner, the best spouse, the best partner. It's kind of an oxymoron, right? Like, well, shouldn't you just work on being your best partner? But if you're working on yourself first, it's going to turn yourself around to be, a better whatever. Has there been questions of that? Has there been, I guess, feedback from that idea of focusing on yourself first before you start focusing on others?
Yeah. I love this. This is definitely a theme that we hear from a lot of our members. And oftentimes it comes in the first month. And again, this, doing something as simple as drinking water.
Yeah.
What are the realizations that come out of that? And one of the most common ones is that, is this idea that in serving everyone else around me and filling the roles of whether it's a mother or a parent or a coworker or a son, and but in giving myself to all these roles and trying to do my best for others, that at some point I had stopped taking care of myself, and that I deprioritized myself to a point where it was unsustainable and something was going to give. And so when someone shares that and they start to realize that, like, oh wow, it is important, like self-care isn't selfish, and I have to find ways to take better care of myself. Otherwise, I'm not actually going to be able to care for the people that I care most about, or help them in the most effective way possible. And so it's always cool to hear people come to that realization and conclusion, and then find ways to, again, care for themselves that don't feel so prohibitive or don't feel out of reach, or that, not everyone has the ability to take a 3-day weekend or do whatever the thing might be. So that's it's certainly been a recurring theme from people, and it's always cool to see that.
Or take a 2-month hiatus to the Mentawai Islands and surf.
That's it. Yeah. I haven't been back.
I don't know if my wife would be down for me just saying, honey, I'm going to Indonesia for 2 months. See you.
Definitely a pre-wife trip.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I keep thinking about as you were going through this is I think a lot of times we say things and create a narrative because it sounds really good. Like, the one that popped in my head that I always, as a CO, I always talk to the sailors and indoc, this shipmate self, right? And the idea that, this big, the ship, and then the shipmate, and then yourself. And one thing I used to tell them is, I said, hey, what I would really like you guys to do is flip that on its head. And I would really like you to focus on yourself. And if you're the best version of yourself, then you can be the best shipmate you can possibly be for your shipmates. And then when the time comes that you have to fight the ship, well, you're the best version of yourself. Your shipmates are prepared because you're there for them, or if they're in crisis, they could come to you and you're prepared to receive that conversation. And then when it comes time to fight the ship, which is a fraction amount of the time, that you're ready to fight the ship. And I think, I didn't put a ton of, outside of my desire for self-mastery and develop, growth, I didn't put a ton of thought into it, but as you guys are talking through it, it just keeps popping in my head that we have this narrative that and we say these things that sound great. I want to be a great father. I want to serve my children. I want to be an awesome husband. I want to be faithful to, I want to be a faithful servant, like all these different things that are very big. But what it really starts with is that focus on yourself to be the best version of yourself, to prepare for those things, to prepare for that battle, right? If you're not doing push-ups and sit-ups and running and carrying boats and all the crazy stuff that you guys do with a 7% pass rate. I was doing the math earlier as you were talking, but 7% of your class, that's more than 9 out of 10 fail to complete. But if you don't do all those things as an individual as well, then you can't help the team, right? You can't be the best dad. You can't be the best husband. You can't be the best servant. You can't do these things. And I think it's this program you developed to get people back into that state of mind is just an amazing place to be if you really take the time to be intentional to go through it. And it's genius, man. I love it. Like I can't wait to start. To be honest, like I'm so excited for, and the fact that it's a resource that people can use and just, I know, we haven't spoken for quite a while, but I know the integrity that's there. So, and the care for others that clearly went into building this thing, that it inevitably you will grow from it. You will become better. And I think that as a goal, as a tangible goal is just an awesome place to be, man. I think it's pretty incredible.
That's cool. That's cool. Thank you for saying that. On this idea of others, and I love the shipmate self, and I love you flipping that on its head, and that you have to show up for yourself first in order to be able to fight the ship and care for your teammates. There is to approach it through maybe a little bit even scientific lens. There's this great neuroscientist, and she's a psychologist, Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett. And she has this theory of the brain and why we have the brain. And so the whole reason that we have a brain from Lisa's work, and Lisa's maybe one of the top 1% most heavily cited scientists in the world. So just a leader in her field. She says we have a brain in order to regulate the metabolic needs of our body, to predict and regulate the metabolic needs of our body. And so this idea that the brain has to deploy resources in advance of your body needing them, so that when your body needs it, it has what it needs to have in order to do the thing that it needs to do. But she goes on to say that when our bodies are in metabolic deficit, that we don't have the very basic things that we need. And so these are things like hydration, there are things like food, but there are also things like feeling socially connected, or maybe having a robust spiritual practice, or whatever the things are that fill up our metabolic needs. But that when we're in a deficit, that we actually lack the capacity for novelty. And novelty means for engaging anything that is outside of the model that we've built, or the model that we've constructed in our lives, or what life is about. And so she says that, humans are designed to effectively regulate one another's nervous systems, that we are social creatures and we require the participation of someone else to be our best. But we can only bring out the best in someone else if our metabolic needs are met first, because it's once those are met, then we have the capacity for exploration, for novelty, to meet someone else that has a different model of the world, or maybe to lean into a little bit of empathy or understanding. And then it's through that process that we bring out the best in someone else, and they bring out the best in us. And just to put a point on this, in buds, when you're going through Hell Week, one of the worst places to be is under a boat. And so we have these like rubber boats that we run with everywhere we go. You're broken up into 6-man boat crews, and it's just insufferable. Depending upon where you're at in the boat, if you're up in the bow, it's the hardest place to be. You take the brunt of the weight, and if you're in the back, it's a little bit easier. But everyone under the boat is suffering to some degree, and the the game is to always be attuned to what's going on with other people in the boat, so you can constantly be rotating and making sure that you're not breaking anyone in your team. I think in many ways going through SEAL training is easier for officers or easier for leaders. That is, if you're doing your job correctly, because if you're doing your job correctly, you're always worried about what are the other people experiencing. And if you can focus on someone else, it takes you out of your own mental headspace of suffering. And you can say like, hey, I need to pick this guy up, or I need to rotate this person in, or I need to, just check in on that person. And if you can do that, they feel that the effects of that, and you get the reverberating effects. And so then you find yourself in this place where it really is like the team and the teammate are one and the same, that we're all caring for one another as like this common organism. So I apologize, I rambled a lot about a few different things here, but I just thought that the point around Lisa's work was interesting and relevant.
That's awesome. And it was not lost on me. And I found it very interesting when you said it. So 17 of the 220, which is 7%, but you said 15 of the 16 of our classmates made it through.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I that was fascinating to me that, whatever, I don't know what that percentage is off the top of my head, but 90%, over 90% of people made it. I'm not trying to play academy games here, Naval Academy. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty awesome that they're all Naval Academy, but I do think it's fascinating that the numbers played out that way. And I just wonder if there's an element of that background and, the overt and kind of, not as necessarily overt training of that officer, focusing on your men, and in this case, being more outwardly focused. I wonder if that plays significantly into that, because it's just that is a fascinating number. That's 15 of 16 made it through.
Yeah. I think so again. And I think the Academy does a great job of picking folks to send to SEAL training. They don't want to waste any slots. And so I think, when done correctly, you get the right person that is focused on the right things. And it's like, how can I be in greatest service to my team, to my teammates? And in doing so, again, I think it makes the program more manageable and easy. And I'll say this is, I don't know if this is at all controversial, but I think the hardest military training that I went through when I was in the military wasn't SEAL training, was actually the mini bud screener that was run out of the Academy. I think it was run over 3 days, and in the winter on the Severn, with no oversight, just some midshipmen that wanted to make things as hard as humanly possible for, what they thought SEAL training should be like. And that was brutal. So anyways, anyone that goes to SEAL training out of the Academy, I think is well prepared for what they have in store.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, we could talk on the subject for probably another hour, and it just reminded me of something else that we have. One of our classmates and Pat, one of your teammates, Dan Knosman, he was on our podcast a while ago. He's actually in Beijing right now, doing the Paralympic Games and crushing it. So, after guys and gals listen to this and then go check out Dan. He's one of our classmates and Pat's teammate, crushing it in the Paralympic Games in Beijing. But I just want to throw that out.
Dan's a beast. Dan's also an advisor at Madefor. He helped us build one of our months focused on breath and this idea of letting go and refocusing. So that's something that he has leaned into in obviously through everything that he's faced, but especially in the Olympic side of things, this idea of like letting go and refocusing. So it's been awesome to have Dan help us build the program. And just a quick small Dan story. I remember showing up to Buds. Dan was in the first wave of officers that went through SEAL training. I was part of the second wave. And so I think Dan was going through Hell Week when we arrived. And I remember we were, all dressed up in our khakis and we're going to have lunch in the chow. We're still doing all of our admin and processing. And Dan and all these boat crews roll up. And I think they were down to like 4 boat crews at that point. They roll up to eat food. And Dan walks up to us. He's like, "Oh, how are you guys doing? Is everything okay? Can I give you any dinner recommendations? Like, are you guys?" And like, we're like, "Dan, you're in the middle of Hell Week. This is like the hardest thing that you've ever done."
That's awesome.
And you're sitting here like checking in on us, making sure we're okay and easing into life in Coronado. So Dan's an absolute rock star. So that's great. If anyone doesn't know Dan, get to know his story. It's amazing.
if we were on our game, we could reference you to what episode that was. But yeah, for our listeners, I don't recall. Just search Dan and be able to find it. But yeah, it's fascinating. I Pat, I'm super appreciative for you taking the time. This is probably one of my favorite episodes that we've done, because I not only obviously having you as a guest and just what you're doing, but I think I'm so excited about this program and the impact that it could make on people if they commit to something like this. You made it so easy to commit to, but also it's so impactful. And I just can't emphasize that enough, that you could literally change your life by running through, the 10 steps. And so I would encourage everybody to go to the website. I would encourage everybody to sign up. I know that you guys do a special for veterans, but I don't even want to highlight that, because I think this is well worth its weight in gold. I think everybody should be committed to, when you go do it, to, a little bit of an investment in yourself, and just the potential, the results that come out of this, I think are just so high. And again, there's that word potential, right? But it doesn't turn kinetic until you do something about it. And I just love the whole idea. And then the rigor that went behind, and the science that went behind developing it, is just, that's top notch. You guys are top shelf, next level varsity. So I really appreciate you, man. It's awesome.
Man, amazing. Well, I so enjoyed the conversation. It's great to connect with you all. And I love the work that you do, and the messages that you're continuing to spread around faith, family, and financial freedom. I think, very, very much aligns with our approach, in that there are these things that you can control, that you can do. And when you do them, they give you more capacity to do more good in the world and bring out the best in others. So I'm excited for that. And for anyone that's listening, if you're a veteran, you're active duty, you're, former service member, or you're military dependent, we give Madefor for free to that community. So you can go to our website. I think down at the bottom, there's a veteran or military section, and just fill out a short little thing there, and we'll send the program to you for free. So it's an honor to be able to give back to that community that continues to serve all of us, and has done certainly so much for me and my family. So
it is so rad, man. Yeah. So guys and gals, hey, go to Pat's website. It's called it's getmadefor.com, and we'll put it in the show notes. Reach out to Pat, and hey, check this program out. David and I are starting next month. And we're going to talk about that.
We're going to get you off the 100 ounces of water.
Yeah, man, we'll get going. And this is awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Like Dave said, it's been a blessing to connect again. And we'll obviously continue to stay connected through your program. And Dave, you got anything else?
No, man. And maybe we'll be able to get through. We were getting made fun of. We were looking at some properties the other day, and our realtor was making fun of us. He's like, I've never seen, you guys are on the 20-minute program. You guys are peeing every 20 minutes. So it's a little bit ridiculous. So maybe we'll get past that.
Yeah.
No, man. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Pat. This was amazing. And just really pumped for our listeners to gain from this. Go to the website, check it out, get on the program, and be better.
Awesome, guys. Well, look forward to connecting again soon.
All right. Take a screenshot of this, share it on your socials, and connect with Pat, get on the Madefor team, and most importantly, go for your storehouse.
Make it a great day, friends. Thank you.
See you.
Thanks for listening to Filling the Storehouse. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe and share it with someone you love. And if you really felt inspired, leave a 5-star review so we could continue to grow and help other Christian entrepreneurs fill their storehouse. If you're interested in creating financial freedom through real estate investing, be sure to check out our website at storehouse310turnkey.com. We'd love to serve you through our platform of building the kingdom. Just click on the contact link and we'll reply to you as soon as we can. Again, thanks so much for listening. Now go fill your storehouse and make it a great day.